This is my Maxline 1/2 inch air installation. That first box you see is the distribution block that comes with the kit I got. It has 4 3/8 inch NPT holes that you can screw various fittings into. There's 3 red hoses coming from that. One is the air coming from the filter dryer from the compressor. The other one goes over here to that reel there, the air reel. And then the third one comes over here to the Bridgeport mill, where there's 2 things that come off of that block. One is this drawbar, air-powered drawbar tightener, and the other, you can barely see it's coming out the back. It goes over here to the coolant mister. Okay, so that's where it starts from, and then it runs along the wall behind this mill, makes a 90, comes down the wall, and I have a T here where it tees off over to this mill. Now, what I've done is I make it so that each item that I'm providing air to can be shut off completely. So I have a valve there to shut off air to the mill, and then there's a second valve in there that's supplied by the kit, and that's to drain water out of the line. The valve feeding the machine, those are 1/4 inch, and those are ones that I ordered separately. So from that T, I come along here and head over to another machine. Comes over here and then hits a T there, and it comes down and goes to the other side of this lathe. So from that T, comes along around the wall and then down to the last one, which is the same block there, and it feeds the blast cabinet. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up there, right up there, and I'm going to put a T in there, and I'm going to come over here. This is my bandsaw, and I'm going to feed feed air to my bandsaw. The system I bought came with 100 feet of 1/2 inch tubing, 1 manifold block. That's the very first piece that had the 4 3/8 inch fittings. It came with 3 outlet blocks. They look similar to this, except this one I made myself. The ones that come with the kit have a 3/8 fitting on both sides, and then a 1/4 inch bushing on one side and a 3/8 inch on the other side. So you can come out with either 1/4 or 3/8. And then you get 6 1/2 inch tubing fittings. Those are these things here. So that's these are 3/8 NPT to their Maxline 1/2 inch tubing. You get 4 1/2 inch plugs. I'm sorry, 3/8 inch plugs. Those are this thing. So if you decide not to use a 3/8 fitting on the back, they give you a plug to block it. They don't give you any plugs for the 1/4 inch. They give you 3 of the 3/8 drain valves. This is what they call their drain valve. It's just a 3/8 inch to 3/8 inch NPT valve. I bought a couple more because I needed more than they supplied. And it comes with 1 T fitting. I bought a bunch more T fittings. And it came with several elbow fittings. These are the elbow fittings. I didn't use any of those. I just went around the corner without an elbow. I didn't care. And then it came with the cutter and the beveling tool. And I gotta say, the cutter works extremely well. In fact, I use it for a bunch of other tubing. It worked really nice too. But cuts really cleanly. You can see inside the tubing, it appears to be Teflon. And then there's a thin layer aluminum tube and then another plastic sleeve on the outside. So I'm going to show how this stuff goes together. So after you trim your tube, you take your reamer, and it has these little teeth down in there. This is kind of hard to push on, but you push this on and then turn it, and it bevels it and reams it square. Pull it off. Oops. And then it's got a slight bevel on it, and it squares it in case you angled your cut. And then you've got your nut goes on, and then the gland nut goes on. And then there's a couple of O-rings in here. And the kit even included, I was surprised, the kit came with 4 extra O-rings, and it's not listed. But in case you've got one that fails when you're putting something on, you tear it or something, that's what that's all about. So you just push this on until you seat it all the way. Slide your gland nut up. Tighten your fitting by hand. You mark it and then turn 5 flats, so 5/6 of the way around, and that's it. There's no torque setting. You don't keep going. It's just 5 flats. Okay, I'm going to show the proper way I was taught to put on Teflon tape and put in a fitting so that it doesn't leak. I had 0 leaks when I was done with the whole system. It's kind of funny if you watch Alex Steele when he did his air system, they missed a critical step and they had about 15-20 leaks. So the way you put on Teflon tape, the way I put it on, I hold it in my left hand with the tape coming off the bottom. And that's because you're going to want to pull it out, and when you pull it out, you're going to need tension on it. And this way, it pulls back into your hand instead of, if you had it from the top, it tends to pop out of your hand. So you hold it, tape coming off the bottom, and then with one finger, hold the tape on and put a little pressure on it until you get the first wrap. Okay, now you don't need the other finger to hold it on. Now you do a total of 4 layers. So it's 3, 4. And then you can just tear it off. Now, the critical part that most people miss is you still need to put on some pipe sealant. This is called Rector Seal. This stuff, if you get it on your clothes and it dries, you will never get it off again. So be very careful. Now you don't need to pull it out with that brush and lather it on. You just need a little bit. What I tend to do is I just kind of go along and dot it like this until I get enough around. It doesn't have to be continuous, because once you start threading this in, you can see it fills up the gaps all the way around. Now when you're tightening up a fitting like this, be careful not to go too tight, because you can split the aluminum or whatever it is you're threading into. So I just want to come around. It's kind of close there. Okay, but the valve still works. So that's all you need. You don't need, this thing I could probably go around again. I don't need to. You try not and go backwards once you've gone tight, but you can go back a little bit. Okay, I'm going to mount this up here. This is going to be air to blow on the saw blade to keep the shavings out of the way. Probably move it up in here so I can bolt through. There is one issue. These blocks that they give you, and I made mine the exact same dimension of theirs. When you put it on a flush surface, you can't tighten this nut because it's uptight. So what I'm going to do is I'll just put a little spacer behind it. The blocks that have the port in the back, the plug that plugs that port can hold it off just enough to be able to turn that nut. But I'm just going to get a little piece of metal, put it behind there, and use that as my spacer. I've got a set of transfer punches, so I'm going to use those to transfer these center marks. Okay, I'm using a 1032 drill and tap. We'll see how this works here. Get that line up with the hole. It's about to go through. That easy. And I put a little bit of tapping lube on the threaded part. This is what a drill and tap looks like. Regular drill with a tap on the last part of it. Works fine for sheet metal. I wouldn't use it for anything much over than about 3/16, maybe a quarter at the most. I glued a piece of metal on the back of this block with just some contact cement, and that'll give me the space I need to be able to turn that nut effectively. On the Maxline tubing, the OD is right around a little over 5/8, and then the ID is about 0.47 I measured earlier. I cut in that T in the line that is going down to my blast cabinet. Now it runs up and over, comes down to my bandsaw. So that's the line I installed, and it goes up and over to that T. I had to keep it under the garage door. Okay, the last of this Maxline project is installed. I finished up this lock line installation that goes down and supplies air to the bandsaw so that it blows the chips away from the blade so you can see what you're cutting.